could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello, everyone. Today we're meeting Justin Schenck. He is the entrepreneur, the podcast host of Growth Now movement, and also a speaker. Hello, Justin. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored, and I look forward to diving into hopefully some topics that inspires your audience or makes them think a little bit.
Yes, let's start. I would start a conversation with diving into your story of becoming the person you are today. So what led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
Oh, what a loaded question, right? Like I think so many people have great journeys that lead them to where they are. And so when I look back, I say my journey really started as a kid. So when I was in high school, I always jokingly say if there was a senior superlative for least likely to succeed, it would have been me. I had a 1.7 GPA in school. My mom at the time was in the middle of a 20-year opioid battle, and my dad was in jail. And so when you look at that, all signs pointed to you've got no shot, kid. And when I was 19, obviously I didn't go to college, right? A 1.7 GPA is not going to get you into a big university. And so I ended up getting a job in direct sales. And while I was there, I found a mentor, and he handed me a book called Who Moved My Cheese. And that book was all about realizing that change happens around you no matter what you do. And all that matters is how you react to that change. And it gave me kind of this light bulb moment of, yeah, I came from not the greatest situation, but that doesn't dictate who I become. Thus began a really long journey of me discovering who I am and what am I supposed to bring to the world. And I had this great passion and desire to be an entrepreneur. And so I was like, great, let me start some businesses. And, with 3 failed businesses under my belt, fast forward a number of years, I was like, let me start a podcast and I'll interview entrepreneurs and kind of pick their brain and figure out how do I become a better entrepreneur. And what ended up happening was 6 months before I launched the show, my mom lost her 20-year battle to opioids. And I had kind of an aha moment of like, the realization that life is so much more than accolades and what society says you should have in life. And my conversations on the podcast became like, what is self-love? And how do you find, passion in your rock bottom moments? And how do you find hope and all these things, right? And so, fast forward from there, the show has now been active for almost 7 years. We're coming up on a 7-year anniversary. And I just feel really, really blessed to have, the success that I have in podcasting. And I've obviously launched multiple businesses from there, and I'm sure we'll dive into all that stuff. But I think anybody's passion and what their purpose is in life comes from that rock bottom moment. And when my mom passed away, it begun a journey for me to realize, what is this life all about? And that's really what I talk about now.
Yeah, that's a great journey that you had. And also you were not put down because of your past, or I guess your family, how you raised up. And that gave you actual strength to move forward and to find that power within yourself. And you found the other side of it, because sometimes people use it as an excuse. Why they would not succeed because I have this and that. And but again, being in the same type of scenario, one person can choose differently. So is it all about the choice? And I feel like if we were, prioritizing our mental health and focusing on developing ourselves and our skills and abilities, we would come to the point where we're becoming a better version of ourselves. And that's where it usually starts. It's within ourselves, with our understanding, the awareness. And you mentioned self-love. What is self-love for you? What is your definition of self-love?
Yeah, all really good questions, right? So I want to start first of like, if we look at my trajectory, they say if your parent's an addict, you have a 50% chance of being an addict. And if your parent's in jail, you have a 50% chance of ending up in jail, right? That's the actual statistics that society says this is where you belong. So if you do the math, I'm 100% screwed, right? Like I've got no shot. And people ask me all the time, like, how do you become the person who overcomes those? And the key part is not playing the victim. right? To get out of the victim mindset of like, why is this happening to me? And start thinking like, why is this happening for me, right? Like, why is this happening for me? So these things that are happening, how can I turn them into a positive, right? It's not easy, and it's a process, and there's things that you can do to set yourself up to be able to be that person who sees things that way. And a massive part of that is surrounding yourself with the right people, right? Although my parents had their things, they loved me, right? I had unconditional love as a kid, right? And that was given to me by embracing me, by saying that I can be anything that I want to be. And so that was a huge catalyst. But then I was really, really smart with who I spent my time with, who I surrounded myself with. And so it's just those small choices throughout your life, right? I always had friends who didn't go down the bad paths in life. I had mentors who had great success that guided them, but it was all intentional, right? I knew that I didn't want to go down a bad path. So I made the small choices to go down only the right path, right? And so it's really about a choice to say to yourself, hey, I'm not going to end up, you might not know where you want to end up, but you need to say, I know where I don't want to end up. And then how do I find my way to go into a better direction? And a lot of times, like I said, it's about surrounding yourself with the right people. Now, self-love is a huge component. And as we talk about it, it's something that I struggled with. I always say that my mom did not die because she was an addict. My mom died because she didn't love herself. Right. And so what happened was I said, hey, I'm going to make a great success out of myself. And I started the podcast, and Inc. magazine said, you're a top 8 podcast every entrepreneur should follow. And then all these other things started to pick up. And I started getting picked up by like BuzzFeed and Thought Leader magazine and all these other places. And my business started to grow. And all the things I thought that once I got, I'd finally be happy, I had. And I woke up one morning and I went, I'm miserable. And I also don't love myself. And I realized that the outside circumstances of life have nothing to do with self-love, with success, with happiness, with all these things. It's all about the internal. And so for me, self-love is really about accepting who you are, exactly where you are at any given time. It doesn't mean we have to settle in that, but we have to embrace ourselves in those moments. And obviously it's super hard, right? Because we judge ourselves. We live in a world now where everybody's posting their highlight reel on Instagram. Now I'm going to compare myself to you, but how do I love myself unconditionally? Meaning, like, if everything gets stripped away from me right now, if the success of the show, my businesses, my loved ones, if everything got stripped away, would I be okay? And the answer is yes, right? Like I'm getting married April 1st and I'm super excited about it. And I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with this woman. But on the flip side, we've had this conversation. So if she hears this episode, it's not the first time she's hearing it. But if she left me tomorrow, I'd be fine. I'd be sad. I'd be really sad, but I would be fine, right? And I wouldn't have been able to say that before. I was the guy in relationships when a relationship would end, I'd try and hold on to it, right? I'd be like, let's fix this. Even if it was a damaged relationship, let's fix it. And I think the power of self-love is to understand that if everything got stripped away from you today, you'd be fine. Right? You are not defined by your things or your successes or the people that have chosen to love you. You're not defined by that. You're defined by yourself. And that to me is self-love.
Right. And I agree with you. Congratulations on your marriage, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you mentioned how it all starts within yourself and with us accepting who we are on every level, everything that we did, everything that we are right now, we just need to accept and own it. Once we are totally in alignment with that, then from that place, you can make a change, right? You can make that decision. And again, we can change now, and it's all up to you. And with that power, knowing that, like you said, if everything is stripped away, you just find yourself being alone, but you're not really alone because you have you, right? And that should be enough. And that extra that you have, all those things, fame, work, significant others, those are just like extra that would add the value. It's not something you should cling on to or depend on or find an addiction in, right? Those are just extra, but you just being yourself should be enough, and you should know the value of it and why are you here, right? And in terms of finding a purpose, like you said, if you just be mindful and choosing people you hang out with, knowing which direction you're going, and just take it step by step, not overwhelm yourself with big plans, but at least know what's going to be tomorrow and how can you achieve those small steps first. That's where you find yourself being on your way. What would you think would be like a good habits to instill in terms of setting that mindset to be a winner?
Yeah, the things that hold us back are our own limiting beliefs, right? We know the term limiting belief. And actually, I did a deep dive on what does that even mean? Like, what's a limiting belief and where does it come from, right? Because it comes from somewhere. Like, we don't automatically just like out of the womb go, I'm ugly, or I'm worthless, or I'm whatever, right? And so when I did some research, I found that limiting beliefs come from 4 places. One is our childhood, right? And it could be as simple as you're literally in the mall with your mom and you're walking down the aisle of the mall and she runs into a friend from college and they go, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. And you hide behind your mom's leg and your mom goes, oh, that's Justin. He's just shy. Your mother wasn't trying to harm you, but that sentence is embedded into your brain. And you can go, you know what? I am shy. I'm shy. So therefore I can't be a public speaker. I can't speak up. I can't let people know how I feel, right? All these things that come with shy, that's a limiting belief from your childhood, right? A second place is ourselves, right? We create our own limiting beliefs. This could be as simple as you ask a woman or a man out and they go, no, I'm not really interested, or, hey, I just want to be single right now. And you go back and you look in the mirror and you go, oh man, she said, no, I'm ugly. I'm ugly. And so all of a sudden we accept that limiting belief, right? The third place is society. And this is a big one. Society told me that because of how I was raised or how I grew up, that I shouldn't be successful. Society tells women all the time that they can't do certain things. Society tells minorities they can't do a certain thing. Society says gay people can't do a certain thing, right? Society tells us these certain things and then we accept them. The problem is us accepting them. People have their flaws. They're going to say what they want to say. It's us accepting them. That creates a limiting belief. And then the fourth place is kind of a woo-woo type of place, but it's our subconscious. We've gone through traumas in our life that we've blacked out and we actually do not remember. And it takes a lot of work to bring those things up, but that can create limiting beliefs in our lives as well. And so a great place to start is to first identify what are our limiting beliefs and where do they come from? Right? Mine came from a worth standpoint, right? I felt not worthy of love, not worthy of success. And that came from some childhood trauma that I went through, and I worked through it with therapists and all these things. But I realized that there's actually a 3-step process that anybody can walk themselves through to overcome any of their limiting beliefs. Now, I said easy, I said simple, it's not easy, right? It's actually very, very difficult. But the first place is we have to get uncomfortable, right? Let's use the I'm shy to public speaking type of thought process, right? People all the time, they say, I would love to public speak. I feel like I have something important to say, but I'm too shy or I'm not good at public speaking. The first thing you need to do is get uncomfortable, right? Get in front of people and start speaking. It's a terribly uncomfortable situation. But when we do that, that creates the vibrational change in our bodies to start to disrupt that thought process. The second thing is surround ourselves with the right people. And this is going to be a theme in this while we're talking, the importance of people around you, right? But who's supporting you? Who's pushing you? Who is making sure you get to that finish line? And then the third place is you have to take action, and because nothing works unless you do, right? So if you're able to do those 3 things a lot of times over and over and over again, you're going to create the success that you want in your life, right? You're going to overcome those limiting beliefs, and you're going to rewrite the story that you're telling yourself within your brain. And that is the only way to truly overcome those limiting beliefs. But that's a great place to start, because if we hold on to these limiting beliefs, we might create success in our life, but it'll quickly be stripped away, because we're going to rewrite history and we're going to self-sabotage, and we're going to bring ourselves back to where our limiting beliefs think that we are versus becoming the person that we're meant to be. And so that's a great place to start when you want to create the life that you want, is to really overcome those limiting beliefs and rewrite them. And a little asterisk here, I want to let people know that limiting beliefs don't just go away. Like we don't just go in there and we disrupt them one time and all of a sudden we're a different person, right? This takes time. This takes multiple times sometimes, right? I've had massive success in my life. I've done great things. People recognize me when I walk down the street sometimes, and it's really, really weird. But with that being said, I still have limiting beliefs of like, who am I? Like, who am I to have that kind of success or that type of experience? And the reality is, I have to go through these processes of getting uncomfortable, putting myself out there, surrounding myself with the right people, and constantly working through that, because I know that my purpose is greater than who I am. And so if I live in my limiting belief, how selfish of me to do that. I need to push through. I need to get uncomfortable, and I need to continue to push forward in my purpose. And so that's a great place to start, because once you do that, you can rewrite your own story.
Right. And you said it's important to recognize those limiting beliefs and see the root. Where did it start? Was it in your childhood, or it was because of somebody else's opinion of you? You know, like this social mantra that I usually say, it's coming from different channels. We listen, we hear, we see, somebody comments, and all of a sudden it triggers something in you. You think maybe there is something wrong with me. You start questioning yourself, right? And we don't realize that actually our purpose, our significance is so important here right now. And we were born to be successful. That's just what we supposed to be doing. This is our birthright. And for some reason, we keep sabotaging ourselves, keep giving ourselves different type of stories or reasoning or excuses why we cannot do certain things. And usually it's tied up to those blocks that we have, right? With us releasing those blocks, letting ourselves be who we were supposed to be, who we can be, it is hard, it is change, and change is unknown. And I know unknown usually is scary for people, and they maybe not willing to be uncomfortable to face those fears. And again, as we know, fear mostly is an illusion unless you've been chased by a bear, right? But here we are, here in this society, being always stressful, scary, anxious. And we need to kind of stop and ask ourselves question, why are we feeling this way? And it's not normal. I think over years, people accept it as being normal, and from that place, they cannot make any changes. They need to bring themselves in another place where they feel, relaxed, feel good, happy, joyful, and they know that they can. So what do you think could be the practices to bring ourselves to that peaceful state where we can make that change?
Yeah. It's funny. Look, there's tools, right? We can meditate, we can do mindfulness practices, we can do all these things. But the reality is discomfort is a good thing. And I think we have to rewrite the narrative on the idea of discomfort or nervousness or whatever. And so here's the thing. I've spoken on over 100 stages at this point in my life. Every single time I get insanely nervous. I like, actually, if you ever see a picture of me on a stage, I usually have a coat on because I sweat, right? So like there's like the sweating factor. So I hide all these things. But what I ended up doing was I rewired the narrative in my brain, because what I realized is our bodies do the same thing when we're nervous as when we're excited. And so I tie every single thing that I do to my purpose. Therefore, I can go, you know what? No, I'm excited to move forward in my purpose. Most problem is people lack direction. People lack what they're supposed to be doing, or they admit that they tell themselves that they lack that, right? Because they're afraid of the potential of who they may become, right? That's scary to become that person. And so, here's the wild thing about purpose and why we need to push through those nerves in order to live in there, right? So at any given time, there are 75,000 people in this world that need to hear your story or your message or the thing that you're learning specifically from you. Not, hey, you know what? There's other people talking about mindset. There's other people talking about overcoming limiting beliefs. Then I shouldn't do it, right? That could be something in my head that I tell myself. But the reality is there are people in this world that need to hear this specifically from me, right? And so how selfish of me not to get uncomfortable, not to live in that little like, okay, I'm a little nervous type of world, and then push forward. Because how selfish of me not to change your life. And so a great example of this is when I started the podcast, I was terrified. I was like, people are going to judge me. people like, what if it fails? Like, what if it's this terrible thing? And for a while it was terrible. Not many people listened. And I didn't know at the time that 80% of podcasts were doing less than 100 downloads. So I thought it was the only person that had a podcast that nobody was listening to. And I was like, what am I doing? And I realized that, or I got into a moment where I was like, maybe I should just end the podcast, right? Like, what's the point of me doing this? Mm-hmm. And then somebody reached out to me from Japan and they said, because of your podcast, I decided not to take my life. Oh, wow. And I realized in that moment that I will always show up, no matter my discomfort level, no matter how much I question it, I will always show up. Now, not everything I do is a success. Not everything that I step into works out. But if I don't try, then I'm missing the point of my life, right? And so I think the main problem people have is it's a worth problem and it's a lack of like direction problem. And then once they get those two things tied in, it becomes a lot easier to push through that discomfort. Because at the end of the day, you can't meditate yourself through having to get on that stage. Like you still have to get on that stage. Yeah. You can't meditate yourself through, ending a bad relationship. You can't meditate yourself through any of that stuff. It's important to find calmness for your own health and your own wellness, right? So obviously do those things, meditate, do those spiritual things, but understand that those things aren't going to be the answer to your problems. The idea is we just have to take action because nothing is going to be solved if we just sit and hope that things change. If we just sit and hope that things get better, we have to take action in order to make it better ourselves.
Right. And taking action has to be consistent. It's not just you try and you stop. You have to realize there's not such thing as a failure, right? It's mostly just you, trying and seeing if that's working. If not, you need to adjust, change something about it. It's not for you to receive it as a stop sign and not trying again, because sometimes people, get discouraged from, like starting a new business or trying their passion or getting out of there, talking. And then they think, like you said, maybe I should stop doing it. Maybe there is no point of me doing it. What if I suck, right? And all those questions come into mind, but that doubt, you need to, again, face it that it's normal. Like this is the normal process. There is nobody that could do it first time. Maybe some people, right? But still, like the majority, they go through struggles and some kind of barriers, but they overcome them, knowing that it's just temporary and something will change. And I'll try again. I'll try a new version of it or whatever it means for you. But you have to understand that you are looking in the long-term kind of result, not expecting it being, overnight success. So usually people, they lose direction on what matters and what are their part in the process. And they just procrastinate and they don't do anything. But like you said, it would be selfish of you not to share your gift. If you know there is something that you want to say or share with people, you have to find a way to do it. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's scary, but with you not doing anything about it, you're being selfish.
100%. Yeah. And consistency is key, right? Like people tell me all the time, including people like Ed Milet and Trent Shelton, they've said like, you're one of the best interviewers I've ever sat down with. Like, it's really kind of mind-blowing to hear those things because I know how shitty I was when I started. I know how much I sucked when I started, right? And so consistency over time, you're going to get better, right? Like the problem is people think, oh, well, I did this 3 times, I suck. Well, of course you do. You've done it 3 times, right? Like think about a little kid trying to learn how to walk, right? Imagine if it stopped trying to walk the first time it fell. Like that's craziness. Like we have literally had the same exact patterns from birth on how to create success in our life. But then at some point we just go, you know what, I give up. And again, it's the comparison thing. Well, I'm not this person or I'm not this person. You're damn right. You're not, you're you. But the consistency is going to make you a better you. Too often, and I own a number of companies in the podcast space that help podcasters get their message heard and grow their reach and all these things. And so I say that because 75% of 78% of podcasters don't make it past their first 7 episodes. And the number one reason is they don't realize how much work goes into it. But the number 2 reason is they don't have an audience that shows up. Well, it takes time, right? Like I always say, like, why would somebody invest time or money in you if you don't invest time or money in yourself, right? There's no point in that. And so now, I mean, I started 7 years ago. It was a different world in the podcast space. But now I look at it and I go, if you don't make it to 100 episodes before you realize, like, okay, I got to get to 100 before I see growth, then don't even play the game. Like, people need to know that you're showing up for them if they're going to invest 30, 45 minutes, an hour with you every single week, right? So consistency and showing up is key. And then also making sure you have a coach or a mentor in a space that you're trying to get better in to help tweak, right? To make sure you are in the right direction. Because it's not always like a stop, start, change everything. Sometimes it is just small tweaks. And so I always have a coach in my life. I always say they stand behind me and grab my shoulders and they go, nope, you got to turn 1 degree to the right. I'm like, cool. As long as I was kind of heading in the right direction, it's a win. And so that's what I need to, that's such a great point that you made about the consistency and showing up, because people miss that boat. They give up way, way, way too early, especially in podcasting, but in life too, right? Like they go work out one time and they go, I don't have abs, so they don't work out again. Well, yeah, no shit. You have 30 years of damage on your body. Like you're going to have to work out more and it sucks, right? But you have to keep showing up for yourself every single day in order to get better, in order to reach your goals. And it's not, unfortunately, it's not always on your timeline, right? Like I wish I had the success I have now 5 years ago, right? But it took me longer to build and do all those things. But I kept showing up and I was consistent and I pushed through the downs of entrepreneurship. At this point, I'm on a massively huge rise, right? And that's awesome. But it was 7 years of hard work.
Right. And like you mentioned, you kept showing up and being consistent. But also, when people talk about confidence, they think some people were born to be confident, but others don't, which is a huge trap that we put ourselves into, because that's not how it is. Once we start doing it consistently over time, that confidence grows, because what it is, it's showing you the evidence that you can do it. And the more you do it, the better you're getting at it. It's a skill and everybody can. So again, with you saying yourself those type of excuses that you're not confident, you're not good at, you just, again, you stopping yourself from trying, and you also decided it's a decision to not to share your gift with others, right? So we have to realize what's important really in our lives, how we how do we feel on a daily basis? Are we feel fulfilled, happy? Is that what we want to leave behind after we're gone? Or there's something more that we should explore and go to that direction and see, again, as once you start doing your part, you're going to see support. You're going to see some people, events that's happening in your favor. So you should understand that this is a creative process and you are part in it, and everything will be, supportive for you to create that type of endeavor that you're in. So I feel like we just need to become aware of what matters.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think we focus on all the wrong things. I've been a victim of it. I still am at times, like focusing on the things that aren't as important, right? And so one thing that I do, I have 4 non-negotiables every single day. So a question that I ask every single guest on my podcast, it's a 2-part question. The first one is, what's your definition of success? The second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself? Very, very quickly, and I knew this would be the case, 0 people have ever answered success is $1 billion in the bank or success is $1 million in the bank. And I've had both millionaires and billionaires on the podcast, right? They didn't answer that. It was so much more than that, right? It's about meaning. It's about connection. It's about, making sure people are taken care of. It's about all these things. And then I realized there was a pattern in the 3 things they did every single day. And that was all the 3 things that they did was always to take care of themselves in some way, shape, or form. To make sure that they're showing up for themselves, right? To take care of their health, to take care of their mind, to take care of their body, whatever, right? And so I started to do these 4 things in my life. The first thing is I move my body in some way, shape, or form every day, usually a walk in the morning or go lift weights or whatever. The second thing is I do a visualization process every single day where I envision some of my big goals. Some days, sometimes it's small, right? It might be, hey, I have a podcast interview today. How do I want it to go? Whatever the case may be. Third thing is I learn something new every day. Since, look, my brand is growth, right? Growth Now Movement is the podcast. So if I'm not growing, I'm dead. And the way I grow is by learning, making sure I learn new skills or learn a new fact or learn a new something. And then the fourth thing is I reach out to somebody I care about every single day, and I just let them know I'm thinking about them. Hey, just wanted to let you know you're on your mind, or you're on my mind. Hope you're well. Let me know how I can support you, whatever the case would be, every single day. And I realized I started to fill my cup, right? I stopped focusing on money. I stopped focusing on growing an audience. I stopped focusing on all these things that I thought I needed to focus on. And I started to focus on these small 4 tasks every single day. And what happened was I got healthier. My business started to grow because my vision was clearer. I started to be able to serve more because I was learning more, and my relationships got better. And once all that happened, then the money came, then the more followers came, then all these things that I was focusing on and trying to chase before, they were chasing me. Like I'm not joking when I say, like, I literally will have multiple phone calls with somebody. They're like, let me pay you something. Let me pay you. What can I pay you? But for me, it's not always about money. Obviously, money's important, right? We want to make a good living so we can support ourselves and do the fun things in life that we want to do, especially with inflation, which has been beautiful. But with that being said, like, we realize that if we focus on the right things, if we focus on taking care of ourselves, filling our cup, the universe, the world will take care of us in return. And so it's really about reframing, right? Focusing on the right things to then create success in life. And so that's really a massive shift for me. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes, and like you mentioned, money or fame or anything that people usually focus on, those kind of things, they come as byproduct of you focusing on what matters, which is building a relationship and making sure that you give yourself time to recharge, to become that to achieve the well-being where you can be the best that you can and you can show up for others, because without you having something to give, you cannot give anything. So you have to make sure that you are at your 100%. And then your work, what's your vision? What's the end goal? So what are you stand for, your values? So you have to make sure all those are in alignment with who you are and where you're going, and also making time for people in your life, saying how you love them and doing it on a daily basis, be grateful for what they bring in your life. So this type of practices, they're very important for us to understand that that's where we become successful without us, trying too hard. Only if we're present in a single moment now, appreciating what we have already, not saying that this is something I'm lacking and that's why I'm miserable, right? But being happy with what you have and knowing that more will come and being ready to show up and do your part. And that's where success will follow you, where you're going to become it. And and like you said, and then eventually you will see all those different type of gifts coming your way. And it's, again, everything has like action and reaction type of mode. So whatever you give out will come back. So it's just, inevitable. So you have to accept it and know what to focus on to sustain that success, to know that, you're going to the right direction and you will see different response and, more support coming your way. And then you will know that this is what I should be focusing on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad
100%.
that,
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that I'm glad that we had that conversation for our listeners. If anything you would like to add in the end before we close.
Yeah, just to kind of add to what you were just saying, I think, patience is a virtue, right? That's a saying for a reason. Be patient in the process. Like, understand that life, hopefully for most, it's a long game, right? Especially if you're taking care of yourself and you don't step out in front of a car, God forbid. But life's a long game, right? Like, we always think that success is in the end result, right? Happiness is in the end result. Once I get X, finally I'm going to be happy. But here's what I've learned in life, and I promise people this. If your goal is $1 million, I champion you to do that. As a matter of fact, I help entrepreneurs do that in my masterminds and my coaching all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to go make $1 million. But I promise you, the second you get to that $1 million, you're going to immediately go, okay, how do I make 10 million? Right? So be patient in the process, because the end result is not the thing that's going to give you the happiness. As a matter of fact, the end of the day, we're all chasing the same thing, and that's death. Right? So find a way to be present at all times. Find a way to be in the moment. Find a way to give the time where it is needed, right? Like, my whole thing is, like, I don't work a lot of hours per week, like on purpose. Like, I'm usually done work around 2 p.m. every single day. I don't take calls on a Friday unless I want to. And so at the end of the day, when I'm working and I'm present. But more importantly, and this is the more important part, when I'm with my friends, I'm present. When I'm with my loved ones, I'm present. And I live in those moments to go, okay, this is all that matters in life, are these moments. And so be patient in the journey. Forgive yourself when you fail. Forgive yourself when things don't go the way it's supposed to go. And just be patient. I promise you, as you push through, things will get better, and you're going to end up creating the life that you want, even if it's not necessarily the way you pictured it.
Yeah, sometimes the way we picture it, we are not thinking about what could be possible. And maybe the end result will be even better than we expected. And we have to be open to all the possibilities, all the opportunities out there. There is no limit, really. Only limit is in our mind. And we are the ones who are setting that limit upon ourselves. And we are the ones who can change it. So if we can make that decision today, everything could change in a year from today. So we have to realize how important it is to make that decision and do something about it. Thank you so much again for sharing your thoughts and wisdom. And thank you for giving the advice to our listeners. It was a pleasure talking to you. And I hope you enjoy your day.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned!